So in this video, we're going to be talking about one of the most polarizing releases I think I've ever seen alongside Raditz and maybe even the ROF Blues, and that is the new Dokkanfest Turles that is about to come out on JP. So let's have a discussion. Is he actually a bad unit? Is he actually mid? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. First, I want to start with the word mid. I'm not going to lie, it's one of the most annoying words I think I've ever seen on the internet ever, just because I feel like the actual meaning of the word mid has completely lost what it's actually supposed to mean. Like, mid is literally short for middle. Middle literally means in between good and bad. In other words, like, that's all right, not bad, you know, it's decent. That's what it's supposed to mean. But everyone chucks out the word mid nowadays as in an insult, like you're mid, like as if you're saying you're bad, which is just not what the word means. By all means, I'm not saying Turles is like the best unit in the game, but he's definitely not the worst. I think he's a solid release. Is he exactly what villain units were looking for, or even, you know, a space traveling warrior lead, you know, was needing and needed for the team? No. I don't think he's mid. I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's amazing. I think he's just good. So in terms of his leader skill, Space Traveling Warriors is a decent 170 lead. Pure Saiyans, we didn't necessarily need another one, but still decent lead. The 200% lead portion as well, Space Traveling Warriors, Planetary Destruction, and also Pure Saiyans Low Class Warriors, also not too bad either. Like if we look at the 170 lead, we have of course the banner units. There's also LR Final Form Cooler being a big heavy hitter. Not so much Full Power Freezer anymore. We have LR Turles, who unfortunately doesn't look to be getting an easy A in this celebration right now. It is instead, which is wild because we all screamed for this for Goku Day, but LR Go Bros is getting an easy A where it would have made sense to easy A them in Goku Day, but he's getting the easy A with Turles instead. I'm not gonna lie, the way Dokkan has been shegging villain units, extreme units recently, has been wild. We had Super 17, who had MVP TOP 17 Easy A, who maybe because he fit the theme because he was a 17 unit, didn't go on the Super 17's lead, nor does he help Super 17 in the slightest, and it made sense to Easy A Android 13. Now we're having Go Bros Easy A with Turles, when you could have Easy A'd LR Turles, who would have helped his category and him. Yeah, they've been shagging villain units, extreme units on a different level recently, but we move. There's also LR Bojack, who's pretty good. There's also Dio, there's Hearts. Might not fit as well, but still a solid unit. And they start to kind of fall off a little bit. There's also the likes of Chilai, there's Fasha. Maybe an argument for Pan in these two, but not so much. I mean, they're not bad, they have aged. Who else do we have on here? Ginyu and the Ginyu Force units. You could do an isolated rotation with them that actually wouldn't work too badly with these two. But Ginyu has also aged. He still can perform in harder content. I know he's kind of slipped down the pecking order. Easy A transforming Cooler. He's starting to take a bit more damage nowadays, but still a decent option, especially with the support and constantly stacking defense. And those are probably the main ones you could pick out. There's still a slight argument for the free-to-play Ginyu Force units. But again, by this point, cracks are starting to show. So that's the 170 lead portion. We'll get onto that in a moment. Here's his 200% lead. Here is the whole roster of 200% lead units. Again, one of the biggest ones being LR Final Form Cooler. Two major damage dealers with him and this new Turles. There's also again the LR, who I don't know what they were doing when it comes to the easy A's right now, but they are shagging hard. There's also the World Tournament Goku. I know it wouldn't be the strongest setup, and maybe you're sacrificing better performance of an overall team to fit a better unit into slot 1 out, but not a bad option. You know, you have links like Saiyan Warrior Race, Prepared for Battle, Fierce Battle. There's also a Path to Power Kid Goku. I know, again, there's a big trade-off, but there are ways and means. Sometimes when building a team, you have to sacrifice in other areas, and also, you don't always have to fit everyone. I know this is the 200 lead, but I just want to say as a side note, you don't always, I know you want to because you want to build the best team possible, you don't always have to build a full 200% lead team to kind of make it work. You know, I did it with a bit more of a recent Easy A with the Easy A Fizz Piccolo because I didn't have Orange Piccolo, and I just put Tech God Goku on there to go under the orange Piccolo lead's friend, so I could have a slot 1 unit to be able to tank in like Broly, etc. So, you know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and some units will still perform well at a 170 lead, but I can understand why you would want to make the best team possible, obviously. Again, there's also Fasha. Who else do we have? I mean, we're kind of dropping down the pecking order again. EZA Transforming Cooler goes on here as well. You know, if you look at potential future EZAs, Broly could be a shout if the EZA is decent. If you are going to mix and match the teams, Path to Power Kid Goku with EZA Int Kid Goku is an option again. Give or taking when team building, sacrificing here or there. EZA Turles could be a shout as long as he's floating, of course. I know, again, at this point, he starts to show some cracks. He's showing some cracks. He takes some damage. You know, that's quite a lot of units in the game. But there are items. You can still bring him and kind of protect him, especially with other units on the team, and probably get away with it, I won't lie. That will help out with Dokkanfest Turles' turn 1 key issues that could arise if there's bad orb placement, and giving him some extra support and also support everyone else. So as an overall lead, 170 and 200% lead otherwise, his leads are not bad. They're solid. So let's quickly run through the remainder of his passive. Obviously, he stacks attack, which is nice in terms of where his damage can get to, depending on how long you're in an event, which I get with some difficult content. You may not always get the chance to get him to ridiculous lengths, but in terms of what I've seen so far from some like private server videos, he's packing heat. I won't lie. He's packing heat. He causes immense damage to the enemy and recovers 6% HP. Considering he could potentially quad super attack, he can recover a good chunk of health. And I know this is RNG related, depending on how many super attacks you do and if those chances do pop. But that's kind of part and parcel of Dokkan, and a lot of units do have that. Even with things such as launching an additional super attack to raise defense, he has the potential to recover a good chunk of HP. So do remember that. He also has his entrance animation. I'm not going to lie, this I agree with so many people. I'm not a fan of. However, I do understand why it's gated. Lock in the support, which Turles units are known for, that key +3 and attack plus 18% for the rest of the battle, gating it and locking it behind there having to be a Goku's family category enemy or an enemy whose name includes Gohan. I'm not going to lie, I'm not a fan of. And there's a small part of me, I know this is just a part and portion of Dokkan, but because of that, and I know there are other parts of the game, and I think sometimes we forget about that just because we're so hyper-focused on how a unit really performs, and you know, they've got to be tested out in the most difficult content in the game, and I get that. Sometimes I get a little bit hyper-focused on that as well, you know, not too far than others, and you know, sometimes I do get lost in it, I won't lie. But there are other parts of the game where you are going to face those enemies. It's just not meaningful content, unfortunately, and it isn't the most difficult content. But I won't lie, I'm not a fan of this because, as I said, a small part of the game is enjoying the animations. Actually, I say small part, it's actually a big part of the game. And obviously Turles isn't the only one, and I've seen this recently and I agree with it. Turles is a unit that isn't an ultra hype character. It's not a Goku, it's not a Vegeta, it's not a Gogeta Vegito. It's not a unit that's like, it's gonna make loads of money, anniversary worldwide, you know, everyone's gonna go crazy for. He's gonna get a release once every god knows when, like few years. So this is also probably why, you know, the negativity is so loud as well. One of the reasons anyway is because if we were getting Turles like every 3 to 6 months like Goku's, it's kind of be like, okay, you know, in like 6 months, a year's time, we'll get a new one and he'll be like 10 times better. Whereas we're not going to get that, unfortunately. And I've seen some of the Turles fans, you must be hurting right now, I guess. Or I've seen it. You're definitely hurting. But yeah, in terms of what I'm talking about, it's the animations. Like, it may not be a big deal to some, but the animations are a big part of Dokkan, and again, while there are other areas of the game, unfortunately, you might not get to see these animations where they matter most. Yes, you can actually just go see them. You can just run the Goku event, which some people do. As I said, there are other areas of the game, and I think sometimes we forget about that. It's just not meaningful content anymore, or put up against the most difficult, so we don't really care about it, or we've been there and done it, I get it. But that bit, I'm a bit like, But I'm not gonna lie, locking it behind something so specific and restrictive, I'm not a fan of. However, I can understand why. Because this isn't just standard support. It's not just, you know, everyone gets attack and defense plus 20% or 30% and key plus 2 when Turles is there. That is an extra key plus 3 and attack plus 18% for the rest of the battle at all times, even when Turles is not on rotation. So I kind of get why they would do it, not to mention the kind of, you know, the direction of the film. It makes sense, but also because it's quite OP. Just because it's active at all times. That is like a permanent key plus 3 for attack, an extra attack plus 18% for units like LR Final Form Caller. For, you know, another Turles' friend, who, if you run your Turles with a friend Turles, that part of his passive, that entrance animation buff, will stack. So that means at all times, with 2 Turles leads, all of your extreme units will be getting key plus 6 and will attack plus 36% at all times, even if the Turles isn't or on rotation. So I kind of get why it's gated behind the entrance animation. However, I just don't like how restrictive it is. Now, in the future, if there's ever, like, you know, we always make jokes, like a blue zone, if there's a super event inspired by red zone where you face off against superclass enemies, one of them is bound to be Goku, or there is difficult, meaningful content that has Gokus, Gohans, all those type of things, then this guy is going to thrive. He is going to shine, he's going to decimate it and completely blow any enemy out the water because of what it's themed around, right? As I said, I'm not a fan of it being gated like that. I mean, maybe add some support into his passive as well, or just something extra, and then have that gated, you know, so there's a bit extra. I don't know. I'm not a fan of this, but I can understand why it's like this. But still. He then gets attack and defense plus 160%, plus an additional attack plus 60%, and launches an additional attack that has a high chance of becoming a super attack when HP is 50% or more, plus an additional attack plus 100% performing a super attack, key plus 2 up to 8, also has damage reduction by 5% up to 20%, and defense plus 40% up to 160 with each super attack performed. Also, attacks become effective against all types, and he also launches another additional attack that has a high chance of becoming a super attack, starting from the turn in which the character performs the 6th attack in battle. Now, in terms of what Turles is, which is a damage dealer, and that's dealing a lot of damage as it is, he's very good at it. You know, as I said, I've seen the private server videos, I've seen him level 10 links, I've seen him rainbowed. You know, he also stacks attack, so the lengths you can get his attack stat up to is pretty crazy. Also, 20% damage reduction is also very nice as well. Very easy and very quick to build up his key and all the extra buffs because of the additional supers. Of course, that's if they pop. But again, that's kind of part and parcel of Dokkan, with it being kind of an RNG related game. You know, we've seen it with anyone with built-in additionals, whether it's cooler units or whoever else. It's part and parcel of the game. So he can build up very quickly. In terms of key, because of his links, he literally only has one key link, which is prepared for battle. This is like a standard Turles link set, okay? I do think some key should have been added into his passive at start of turn, because I have seen some things where if orb placement is very unkind to you, Turles is struggling for key, and I don't believe units should be struggling for key that badly in 2023. You know, we've also seen it with the likes of Beastless Gohan. So I think to make up for that, at the start of his passive with that 160 on attack and defense, he should have had like key plus 2, key plus 3, just to kind of add in a bit more consistency and cover for the fact there may be, you know, bad RNG when it comes to orb placement and you can't super attack with him. Considering his whole thing is him built off dealing damage and him stacking, he needs to super to do that. So I do feel like to kind of cover the worst case scenario, some starter turn key would have been good, and that could have made up for it easily. But unfortunately, they didn't put that in there. Other than that, I said what he is made to do, which is a damage dealer, which I also do agree on this point as well. When it does come to his lead, when it does come to extreme type units, having just a raw big damage dealer unit is not what we wanted and not what they needed. I do agree with that 100%. We needed like one of these godlike units, like a God Goku, like a 23rd World Tournament Goku, like an Orange Piccolo, who have a bit more about them. A slot 1 unit, someone who has God, decent damage output, and overall, as it just has kind of like that godlike treatment. Like, we don't really have one of those. Extreme units don't really get that type of love that super type units do. Don't get me wrong, LR Final Form Caller from like what, last year was ridiculous because his damage became second to none. We're now almost a whole year later. Getting towards those type of numbers has become a little bit more of a normalcy. So, as I said, we don't really have like a slot 1 unit on an extreme team that is just like good damage output, really good defense. He has guard, maybe some support as well, or built-in crits. But he is very good at what he does. As I said, he stacks. The length his attack can get to is ridiculous. Bit of damage reduction. You know, his defense isn't bad by any means. I'll get onto those in a minute with the calculations. He could potentially super attack 3-4 times in one turn, which, you know, of course, he's continuously stacking. He can do a whole bunch of damage, like 8, 9, 10, 11, probably up to 12, 13 million. And he's constantly doing that over and over again. And then after the 6th attack, his attacks become effective against all types. He's doing a whole lot of damage. And I know defense is a priority when it comes to difficult content, but this guy can tank normals. He can tank normals, and he can tank supers as well with an item. I do think a lot of people forget there are items in the game. And I know he doesn't have like 700-800k defense, or maybe like a mil defense and guard, and tanks them for hardly anything. But not all the new units in the game are supposed to be like that. Not every single new release has to be the new best unit in the game, or in contention for top 3. That's just not the way it's supposed to be. Otherwise, Dokkan, while some of the challenge from Red Zone has gone, but we need some new difficult content anyway, but not every single difficult content in Dokkan is meant to just be done with no problem whatsoever. So having every single unit in the game that has ridiculous defense, guard, damage reduction, and does like 20 mil attack stats, it's not supposed to be that way. So I'm okay with Turles not being like number 1 or in top 3. But we've got some damage calculations from Minato. And this is Turles Rainbow level 10 links. As you can see, when he's fully built up, no support with these links active, Big Bad Bosses being one of the main ones, 641k defense. So with no support anything, with those links active, 641k defense. To me, 600k defense is kind of the standard for units nowadays to be able to tank. Like, he can tank all basics. As I said, with an item, he can tank all super attacks. Will it be for like 20 damage? No. Might still take a little bit of a chunk, but he'll be able to tank them. He'll be able to survive. So while doing the amount of damage he can do, while having the kind of standard or solid defense to be able to survive against these units, I think that's okay. Then there's the same situation with 50% defense, which is 765k. This is tanking some super attacks in difficult content. And again, tanking all normals. Then we also have fully built up all links, no support. A little bit less than this, but again, tanking all normals. Starting to tank some supers. Then the same situation with the support, 874k defense. He's starting to tank a few of the hardest hitting bosses' super attacks. And with an item, with a Whis, which again, they're in the game, you can use them, they are there unless you're doing no item runs. He can tank a lot of supers in the game. For a unit that doesn't have much defense in his passive or any defense on, you know, as a super attack effect, with a Whis active, he can tank supers pretty well, while, don't forget, recovering HP on every single super attack he does. Then we have the support units, who, by the way, this unit as a slot 1 unit is ridiculous. It does provide some support for Turles, but most importantly, and especially on his lead as well, does provide him on some links that he may otherwise miss out on, or maybe not miss out on, but kind of gets a lot of those important links active, such as Destroyer of the Universe. Like, this gives a lot. Attack plus 25% for a level 10 attack plus 25% and defense plus 15%. Then you have the likes of, also, as I said, the support. I've also just closed it, but we move, it's fine, they have it as well. Thirst for Conquest, Brutal Beatdown, Fierce Battle. They kind of tick a lot of the Turles' links, while also providing him with a slot 1 unit, and then also providing him with a little bit of support as well, which is great. Which is great. You know, one of the biggest links he does miss is Big Bad Bosses, but in terms of a team build, there are enough decent Big Bad Boss units, especially if you do sacrifice having potentially 1 or 2 of those units not on a 200 lead and just a 170 lead, which, by the way, is okay. Again, I know you'd want to go for the best team build, but it's okay. You know, you should be able to have one of those, or be able to have one of those on your rotation, like every turn Turles appears. So I feel like that's okay. But as I mentioned earlier on, I think one of the biggest things with this unit is, with what villain teams need right now, Turles isn't providing that. he's not, like, the 20% damage reduction is nice, but he's not a slot 1 unit, especially for his team. Like, you don't have choices of LR Golden Freezer or the Easy A Golden Freezers like Terrifying Conquerors does. His team doesn't have one, so he could have been that one. Not to mention as well, we just don't have one of those godlike units that the superclass units get treated as, where you have guard. Like God Goku, for example, stacks, guard, dodge, his own orb changer, decent damage output, decent defense. Like, he has it all. Whereas, you know, a lot of the recent extreme units, aside from Super 17, is pretty much just does a lot of damage, and that's about it. But that's kind of a Dokkan thing, always shegging extreme class units, I won't lie. But in terms of what Turles does, which is deal damage, which a lot of it as well, like, don't forget, he's going to be stacking the entire time, then uses active, he's going to be decimating, like, completely wiping enemy health bars. And, like, don't get me wrong, while Turles isn't what his team nor did extreme teams need right now, with what he does, he's good at it. You know, when it comes to top 10 TURs, he's not top 5. I think the top 5 are too good to be displaced, and that's not Turles' fault. But in terms of there, he's definitely within the top 10. In terms of where you put him is entirely up to you. I definitely think he's in the top 10. He's very good at what he does. Defensively, he's at that bare minimum, the kind of standard. Yes, could he have been a little bit better? Could you have raised his defense by 30% on super? Yes, 100%. And if you did that, I feel like it'll be a whole different story of how good Turles is actually being received in the community. But his defense is kind of at that standard where it's good enough. He can tank majority of normals, or all normals, with a Whis active or an item active. He should be able to tank supers. Yes, it won't be for like nothing, but he'll be able to tank them. He'll be able to survive them, and also deal a whole lot of damage, considering he has the potential to quad super, and attacks are effective against all types, and deal a whole lot of damage while infinitely stacking his attack. He'll only get stronger. And then not to mention, he'll also recover HP as well. So he's recovering a ton of HP with the amount of times he can super attack as well. So as I said, he's good at what he does. It's just not what was needed for villain units or his team either. Kind of needed a slot 1 unit. I get that. I agree with you. And it's unfortunate they didn't do that. And they kind of went for just a big heavy hitter. But he is good at what he does. I won't lie. He is good at what he does. And I feel like he's receiving a bit too much hate, if we're being honest. Because again, not every single new unit has to be the new best unit in the game. Otherwise, Dokkan would be pretty dead. Dokkan would literally be... There would be no point in playing. It would literally be, you might as well auto mode absolutely everything if that was the case. But I do believe extreme units need a little bit more of that superclass treatment, just so, you know, they can just share the same love, because extreme units have been shagged for quite a while. I won't lie on that front. But in terms of the amount of hate he gets, I do believe it's a little bit too much. I do believe it's just a little bit too much. You know, you could even go as far, and again, this comes under the idea and what I said earlier, not everyone has to be under 200 lead. And I know, again, you're kind of sacrificing in team building, but Pure Saiyans is a wide category that has some of the best units in the game. Yes, you won't have, you know, most of these links active, but, you know, whoever's floating, you could still trigger the likes of big bad bosses, maybe Thirst for Conquest, maybe Brutal Beatdown. But you could have a Pure Saiyan unit in slot 1 like Berku or something, you know, triggering generic links like Saiyan Warrior Race, Prepared Battle, Fierce Battle, who can actually handle slot 1 to kind of help Turles out. You know, I know it's not ideal, I know you can't make the best team possible under a 200% lead, but it does give you a bit of diversity and extra layers to team building that, you know, are there if you want to use them. Overall, to sum this video up, I do believe his lead is decent. I do think he is a very, very good damage dealer. As I said, constantly stacking, can super attack like almost like potentially 4 times in one turn. Attacks effective against all types as well after the 6th attack. And then after that, he's constantly doing that while constantly stacking. And you're talking like 9, 10 million attack stats, 11 mil attack stats that are constantly growing. He can do a whole lot of damage to enemy health bars, which in some points, attack can be just as important as defense. Like, yes, you got to survive, which, as I said, with items against supers, Turles can do. He has the bare minimum defense to survive against basics, like standard. You know, you also got to beat the enemy. So him with like an LR Final Form Cooler, you are going to shred health bars. Don't forget that. But in terms of everything else, I do think some key in his passive would help, especially on like the first initial turn he appears before he starts building up. I don't like how this is gated. Maybe they could have done something else, like a bit of support in his passive, and then have this gated just so, you know, you can have the support there as well. But in general, I just don't like how it's gated like that, but I kind of understand because of how strong it is. Is he best unit in the game? No, but still not every single new unit has to be. And also with the LR Turles squad or LR Turles team unit not receiving an easy A, it does mean this guy will age a little bit quicker. Like I said, he's still a solid unit. He's still a solid unit. He's still within that top 10. And as I said, I think he receives a little bit too much hate than he actually deserves. It's not what Extreme Teams needed. It's not what his team needed, which is fair enough, and I agree. But he's good at what he does, even though we didn't need necessarily another big just damage dealer. I do agree with that. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe while you're there. I'll see you in the next video, guys, and peace.